My mother stood at the window, arms crossed. My father didn't even look at me. He just muttered the words. You're a drain. A mistake. We're done pretending otherwise. Funny thing about being told you're worthless, it sticks. You hear it enough times, and even when you make your first dollar, your first thousand, hell, your first million, that voice still echoes. Quiet, but persistent. Fast forward 13 years. Yesterday morning, I walked into the same mansion they'd thrown me out of. It hadn't aged well. Cracks spidered across the marble floors, and the portraits on the wall. My father in a navy suit, my mother in pearls, me conspicuously absent, looked like desperate clinging to a world that had already moved on. Elias, my father said, standing too straight for someone that desperate. You look, well, I didn't smile. Didn't offer a handshake. Just took a seat like I owned the place, which, technically, I could have, if I'd wanted to. You need 50 million, I said flatly, to keep the feds from crawling up your spine and freezing every last account. He cleared his throat. My mother looked everywhere but at me. We've made mistakes, she said. And we know we didn't treat you as we should have. I let that hang. The understatement almost made me laugh. Instead, I reached into my coat and pulled out the papers. Neatly printed, ironclad terms. My lawyer had drafted them the second their name showed up in my inbox. This saves your company, I said. Keeps you in your house. No jail time. No headlines. All you have to do is sign. My mother moved first, pen trembling like it weighed 100 pounds. My father followed, slower, every letter looking like it physically hurt. And then they looked at me, expectant, maybe even a little hopeful. We're a family again, my mother said. That's when I smiled. The kind of smile that should have warned them something was coming. But they weren't ready for my next move. Their signatures sat like bloodstains on the page, final, inescapable, permanent. I slid the documents back into the folder slowly, like I was tucking in a sleeping snake. You really did it, I said, tapping a finger against the signature line. Sold yourselves for the same kid you kicked out without so much as a goodbye. My father opened his mouth to speak, probably some half-baked apology laced with pride-swallowing desperation, but I raised a hand. Save it, I said. This isn't a reunion. This is a transaction. Let's keep it honest. My mother shifted in her chair, discomfort fluttering across her face like a ripple on glass. Elias, she began, we were trying to protect you. You were lost, rebellious. Your choices. I laughed then, loud, unapologetic, and colder than the stone floor beneath our feet. Protect me? I leaned forward. You kicked me out because I didn't want to take over your legacy of lies and leveraged assets. You disowned me because I didn't want to be like you. They didn't deny it. 13 years ago, I slept in my car behind a diner and washed dishes for tips. Ate stale bread, showered at the gym, and wore the same hoodie until it stopped being a hoodie and started being a threadbare reminder that I had nothing. But I had something they didn't. Time, hunger, rage, and a brain no one had bothered to believe in. While they were clinking champagne glasses and backslapping senators at fundraisers, I was coding at 3 a.m. on a library Wi-Fi. I built a predictive finance model that turned spare change into capital. Then I sold that model to a hedge fund. Then I used that capital to bet against every bloated, ego-driven firm that ran like my father's. I made my fortune from men like him. And now here we were, the beggar and the billionaire, only the roles had reversed. I want to show you something, I said, standing. They followed me out of the study and into the main hall, where the antique mirror still hung above the mantel. That mirror used to terrify me as a kid. It reflected everything, your posture, your lies, your disappointments. Look, I said, motioning toward it. My mother frowned, confused. My father narrowed his eyes. All I see is us, he said. Exactly, I whispered. Two bankrupt souls reflected in their own legacy. That's what your empire became. And now, you belong to the boy you threw away. My phone buzzed. They just wired the funds, I said casually. Congratulations. You're saved. Relief flooded their faces until I handed them a second envelope. What's this? My father asked, suspicion creeping in. Your retirement plan, I said. You're stepping down. Publicly. Effective immediately. As of this moment, the board has already been informed. And guess who's taking your seat? My father's face turned the color of raw paper. You. I nodded. I didn't just buy your company. I bought your name, your reputation, your legacy. My mother's lips parted, trembling. But why, she asked. Why help us, if you hate us? I leaned in close. I didn't help you. I bought you. That's the difference. And hate? No. Hate is a waste of energy. I looked them both dead in the eye. This is principle. Their signatures sat like bloodstains on the page, final, inescapable, permanent. I slid the documents back into the folder slowly, like I was tucking in a sleeping snake. You really did it, I said, tapping a finger against the signature line. Sold yourselves for the same kid you kicked out without so much as a goodbye. My father opened his mouth to speak, probably some half-baked apology laced with pride-swallowing desperation, but I raised a hand. Save it, I said. This isn't a reunion. This is a transaction. Let's keep it honest. My mother shifted in her chair, discomfort fluttering across her face like a ripple on glass. Elias, she began, we were trying to protect you. You were lost, rebellious. Your choices, I laughed then. Loud, unapologetic, and colder than the stone floor beneath our feet. Protect me? I leaned forward. You kicked me out because I didn't want to take over your legacy of lies and leveraged assets. You disowned me because I didn't want to be like you. They didn't deny it. 13 years ago, I slept in my car behind a diner and washed dishes for tips. Ate stale bread, showered at the gym, and wore the same hoodie until it stopped being a hoodie and started being a threadbare reminder that I had nothing. But I had something they didn't. Time, hunger, rage, and a brain no one had bothered to believe in. While they were clinking champagne glasses and backslapping senators at fundraisers, I was coding at 3 a.m. on a library Wi-Fi. I built a predictive finance model that turned spare change into capital. Then I sold that model to a hedge fund. Then I used that capital to bid against every bloated, ego-driven firm that ran like my father's. I made my fortune from men like him. And now here we were. The beggar and the billionaire. Only the roles had reversed. I want to show you something, I said, standing. They followed me out of the study and into the main hall, where the antique mirror still hung above the mantel. That mirror used to terrify me as a kid. It reflected everything, your posture, your lies, your disappointments. Look, I said, motioning toward it. My mother frowned, confused. My father narrowed his eyes. All I see is us, he said. Exactly, I whispered. Two bankrupt souls reflected in their own legacy. That's what your empire became. And now, you belong to the boy you threw away. My phone buzzed. They just wired the funds, I said casually. Congratulations. You're saved. Relief flooded their faces until I handed them a second envelope. What's this? My father asked, suspicion creeping in. Your retirement plan, I said. You're stepping down. Publicly. Effective immediately. As of this moment, the board has already been informed. And guess who's taking your seat? My father's face turned the color of raw paper. You. I nodded. I didn't just buy your company. I bought your name. Your reputation. Your legacy. My mother's lips parted, trembling. But why, she asked. Why help us, if you hate us? I leaned in close. I didn't help you. I bought you. That's the difference. And hate? No. Hate is a waste of energy. I looked them both dead in the eye. This is principle. They didn't speak right away. Not because they were stunned, that moment had already passed, but because they finally understood. They weren't in control anymore. Not of the room. Not of the outcome. Not of me. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again, like a man biting down on the realization that the crown he wore his whole life was nothing but gold spray paint on cardboard. My mother, ever the tactician, tried to recover. Elias, we're still family. You don't have to humiliate us. This isn't about humiliation, I said, stepping toward the fireplace, where their family crest still hung above the mantel like a relic from a forgotten empire. This is about recognition. You two built your empire on power, leverage, control. But you forgot the most dangerous thing in business, the kid you underestimate. My fingers traced the frame of the crest. Sterling silver, encrusted with tiny diamonds. I remembered polishing it every Sunday while my father dictated financial forecasts from his leather armchair. What do you want from us? He finally asked. The words came slow, heavy, like they cost him something. Nothing, I replied. Not your love. Not your forgiveness. Not even your apology. I turned back to them. I just want you to live long enough to watch the world forget your name and remember mine. I left them standing there, two ghosts in a mausoleum of their own making, and walked out into the garden. It was the same path I'd taken the night I was kicked out, only now the gravel didn't bite into my shoes, and I wasn't limping under the weight of shame. I was ascending. The following week, the press releases went out. Sterling and Company was now Elias Sterling Capital, and the founder, Mr. Richard Sterling, had voluntarily stepped down due to personal matters. My mother issued a brief statement through her PR firm thanking the public for their support. Nobody cared. The markets didn't flinch. Their names didn't trend. The world moved on. Because power, real power, doesn't come from money. It comes from narrative. And I had rewritten mine. The first board meeting was a quiet affair. The remaining directors had already been primed, most of them far more loyal to profit than bloodlines. I laid out my vision. Transparent portfolios. AI-enhanced prediction models. Hard pivots away from speculative real estate and into decentralized digital infrastructure. They nodded, impressed. One even smiled. Your father never saw half this far ahead, he said. That's because he was too busy admiring his own shadow, I replied. After the meeting, I stood in the corner office that used to be his. The view hadn't changed. Still the skyline. Still the horizon. But the man looking out over it had. My reflection in the glass wore no guilt, no fear, no need for validation. Only resolve. That night, I didn't go home. I went back to the small apartment I kept above the old bookstore downtown, the place I lived when I was 19 and broke and hungry. I didn't need the penthouse. I didn't need the imported marble floors. What I needed was to remember. I poured a glass of bourbon, sat on the couch that sagged in the middle, and pulled out the letter. The one I wrote the night they kicked me out. It was on lined paper, folded so many times it looked like a relic from another life. One day, you'll come knocking, I'd written. And I won't slam the door in your face. No, I'll open it. Let you inside. And then I'll show you exactly who I became without you. I burned it. Watched the paper curl and blacken in the ashtray, the words eaten by flame. That promise had been kept. Time to write a new one. The press was quiet at first. So I fed it. Quietly. Strategically. A leaked memo here. A concerned investor quote there. I didn't even have to fabricate it, just highlighted what was already public knowledge, but buried deep beneath the sheen of their PR. Shady acquisitions. Inflated asset valuations. A pattern of margin call bailouts masked as capital realignment. The house of cards they'd built didn't need much wind. It just needed someone to blow with intent. Within 2 weeks, Business Insider ran the headline, How the Sterling Empire Nearly Imploded, and the Estranged Son Who Took Over. By the end of the month, Forbes called it a coup of elegance. I didn't give interviews. I didn't issue statements. That was the key. Let them talk. Let the world ask why the parents were silent while their son rebuilt their company from ashes. And when my father finally cracked and went on a late-night business talk show to clear the air, he did exactly what I expected, tried to rewrite the script. Claimed the transfer had been planned for years. Claimed I'd been groomed for the role, that it was a family succession. Claimed I was his greatest accomplishment. I watched the clip on mute, sipping coffee in my office, and smiled. That was his tell. He was scared. Desperate to clutch a dignity that was already gone. I waited exactly 48 hours, then made my move. A carefully timed internal leak. Audio from a boardroom recording 3 years ago. My father, on tape, laughing as he said, "My son? He's dead weight. No bite. No instinct. He'll end up coding apps for minimum wage." The clip went viral in under 12 hours. Overnight, every puff piece about his legacy turned acidic. He didn't step down. He was dethroned. And worse, he was wrong. The backlash was swift and merciless. The Sterling name, once synonymous with financial prowess, was now a cautionary tale. Talk shows mocked it. Editorials dissected it. Shareholders disowned it. And in every article, my name stood in contrast. The reformer. The outcast turned architect. The prodigal son who didn't return to forgive, but to take over. My mother tried to call the next day. I let it ring. The voicemail she left was less apology, more veiled plea. "I know we weren't perfect," she said, "but we're still your parents. We raised you. We gave you life." I didn't respond. I forwarded the message to my legal team with a note. No response. Archive it. Because the thing they still hadn't learned was this: family doesn't entitle you to forgiveness. Blood doesn't buy immunity. Love, if it ever existed, is not a bank account you can draw from when your fortune runs dry. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. And now the world saw them for what they were. Not fallen royalty. Not misunderstood visionaries. Just people. Flawed, desperate, and dethroned. That night, I stood in the gallery of the firm's headquarters where their portraits used to hang. My assistant asked if I wanted new portraits commissioned. I shook my head. "Let the wall stay empty," I said. "It tells a better story." She smiled, nodded, and walked away. It started with a knock on the glass. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that knows it already has it. I looked up from my desk, and there he was, Malik. Faded denim jacket, crooked smile, the same scar slicing through his left eyebrow from when we were kids, and he tried to jump the fence behind McCaffrey's scrapyard and ate pavement instead. "You really gonna pretend you don't see me?" he said, stepping into my office like he owned the place. "Or do I need to knock harder, Mr. Sterling?" I stood, blinking once, then let the ghost hug me. It wasn't really a hug, not the kind you give family. It was the kind forged in shared hunger and busted knuckles and nights spent sleeping under bridges because nowhere else would have us. "You look like a Wall Street villain," Malik said, grinning. "Missing the cape, though. And you look like you still owe me $20, I said, finally cracking a real smile. He tossed a worn envelope onto my desk. "With interest." Inside was a check. I didn't bother looking at the number. That wasn't why he was here. "So what's this?" I asked. "Victory lap? Reunion tour." Malik shrugged and sat across from me. "Saw the news. Thought I'd see for myself if the kid they threw out really became the man who bought the whole damn block." I leaned back in my chair. "And?" He studied me for a long second. "You got everything you wanted. Power. Name. Respect." His voice softened. "But do you sleep?" That landed heavier than I expected. I looked out the window. "I sleep enough." "Enough for what?" he asked. "To forget? Or to keep count?" I didn't answer. He already knew. Malik always had a way of pulling the thread until the whole thing unraveled. He tapped the side of his head. "You were always the smart one. Quiet. Calculated. Cold, even back then. But you had a line. You never crossed it. Never used people like they used us." "Maybe I learned," I said. "Maybe I just got tired of bleeding for people who saw me as nothing." "Maybe," he said. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a crumpled photo. Us. 17. Hoodies and cracked smiles. Standing in front of the diner we used to bust tables at. Behind us, taped to the window, a help wanted sign we both applied for on the same day. "Remember that night?" he asked. I nodded. "We split a loaf of bread and a can of soup. And you said one day we'd buy the place." I smiled faintly. "I did buy it." "Yeah." He chuckled. "Let me guess. Knocked it down and built a blockchain investment firm." I didn't answer. He already knew that too. His eyes changed then. "Elias, this crusade, these headlines, the empire, is any of it making you feel less abandoned?" That one hit bone. I stood up and walked to the minibar, poured 2 fingers of scotch, and handed him a glass. "I'm not trying to feel less abandoned," I said. "I'm trying to make sure I never am again." Malik nodded slowly, raised his glass, and clinked mine. "To the fortress, then. Built from salt and silence." We drank in silence. And I realized something. Malik wasn't here to stop me. He was here to remind me that once upon a time, I didn't need to win to matter. I just needed to survive. And now, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was shaping the world in my image, one scorched truth at a time. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Malik's question echoed louder than anything my parents had ever said. "Do you sleep?" "No, not really. But when I close my eyes, I don't see them anymore. I see the next move. And it's already in motion." His name was Vincent Hale. A name that used to strike fear in financial circles and still did in the darker corners of private equity where the rules were more suggestion than law. Back when my father still thought he was invincible, Vincent was the shadow he pretended wasn't breathing down his neck. A predator in a bespoke suit, always 3 steps ahead and never seen coming until you were already bleeding. They used to say he could bankrupt a man over breakfast and make him thank him for it by lunch. I knew the stories. What I didn't know was that he'd been circling, waiting, watching the collapse of my parents' empire like a buzzard perched on a church cross, head tilted, waiting for the body to twitch one last time. He reached out through an intermediary, a polite little email from someone I'd never met but who knew exactly what kind of scotch I drank and where I liked to park my car. The message was clear. Mr. Hale would like to discuss a matter of shared opportunity. Discretion assumed. Time is limited. I didn't reply. I showed up. Alone. At his private club in Midtown. Velvet walls, mahogany panels, the kind of place where fortunes were traded over chessboards and sins were served neat. He was waiting at the corner table, sipping something older than my entire company. "So," he said without standing, his voice low and razor-sharp. "The prodigal son who didn't come back to kiss the ring. You came back to melt it down. You know how it goes," I said, taking the seat across from him. "Necessity, invention, spite." He smiled like a man who enjoyed watching fire spread. "Your father never saw it coming." That's what I respect. You were patient, brutal, efficient. But I have to ask, Elias, do you know what you've inherited? I leaned back. A pile of bones in a velvet bag. And enemies, he added. More than you know. Your father made them, then paid them off. You, however, you've made them look stupid. Let me guess, I said. You want to help me manage that risk. In exchange for opportunity, he said, swirling his drink. Sterling's overseas interests. Some of them, let's say, are tied to networks that require a certain delicacy. And you think I'm going to let you back in through the service entrance? No, Vincent said, smile never fading. I think you already know the alternative. The same networks that propped up your parents can just as easily decide you're not worth the protection anymore. I studied him. No threats. Just inevitability, dressed in silk and old money. But what he didn't realize was this. I wasn't my father. My father built kingdoms with borrowed power. I built mine in exile, with no one backing me but rage and code and sleepless nights. And I had no intention of sharing my throne with the ghosts he used to fear. I stood, slow and deliberate. Tell your networks this. I'm not looking for peace. I'm looking for silence. And if they're smart, they'll give me what I want. Vincent's smile finally cracked. Just a hair. You're bluffing, he said. You don't have the reach. I leaned down close enough for him to smell the truth. I don't need reach, Vincent. I am the storm. And when it comes, the ones who didn't run early enough won't get a second chance. His glass paused midair. For a second, just one, he blinked like a man who forgot the world had changed while he wasn't watching. Pleasure meeting you, I said. Hope it doesn't become a problem. And I walked out. No bodyguards. No escort. Just the sound of a predator realizing the prey grew fangs while he wasn't looking. That night, I got a message. Anonymous number. The email subject line just said, "Hi." No name. No sender I recognized. But the moment I saw it, my chest tightened like a fist was reaching inside and squeezing something I'd thought was long dead. I clicked it open. One sentence. Still eat your fries last? No signature. No punctuation. But I knew. There was only one person in the world who used to tease me about that, the way I always left the best for last. The girl with the chipped black nail polish, the cheap camera always hanging from her neck, and the laugh that didn't belong in the dirt she was raised in. Ava. We hadn't spoken in 10 years. Not since I left that town, that job, that life. I buried her along with everything else I couldn't afford to carry. So why was she here now? I didn't respond. I drove. 3 hours south to the edge of the city where buildings get small and gas stations still sell scratch-offs next to hot dogs. I found her at the place she said goodbye from all those years ago. The old pier. Of course. She was sitting on the railing, worn boots dangling, wind cutting through her denim jacket like it always used to. And when she turned and saw me, she smiled like time had slowed but hadn't stopped. Hey, stranger, she said. I didn't speak. Just stared. Because seeing her was like being punched in the gut by a memory that refused to stay buried. I saw the interviews, she continued, hopping down and walking toward me. The headlines. The takeover. The empire. Her eyes softened. The fire. Didn't know you still followed me, I said, voice rougher than I expected. Didn't know you still existed, she shot back, not unkindly. You disappeared. I had to. No, she said, stepping close enough to smell like cinnamon and chaos. You chose to. I looked past her to the horizon, to the water that looked exactly the same as it did when I was 17 and broke and kissing her behind the bait shop pretending we had a future. Why now? I asked. Why reach out? Because I saw your face on the screen, she said. And it didn't look like yours anymore. I flinched. She saw it. You smile now like someone taught you how to do it in a boardroom. I shoved my hands in my coat pockets, heart beating like I was back in high school with a stolen beer and a lie on my tongue. Why?